Dateline Washington, Wednesday, 28 May. Secretary of the Navy John C. Phelan announced this week that the U.S. Navy will no longer conduct animal experimentation involving dogs and cats, which is welcome news, don't get me wrong. I mean, I can't imagine any material way in which our naval defense readiness was being bolstered by suffocating Fido and Fluffy, and also we have Elon Musk and the Doge boys to thank for this one as well, because this was a thing that they identified, and they took it to leadership, and leadership took it to the SecDef, and the SecDef said, yeah, that's a hell of a good thing to get rid of. Well done. But at the same time, knowing President Donald Trump, as I like to think I do, I can't help wondering to what extent this is a total troll move on his part. Like he's testing the limits of how far the media Democrat complex is willing to go with their central organizing principle of, if Trump does a thing, then it's bad and evil and we hate it. Because let's call things what they are. We know for an absolute fact that the moment this news story broke, all of the usual suspects, all of your disgraced former fake news sludge mongers who are currently podcasting from their spare bedroom, your Jim Acostas, your Don Lemons, your Keith Olbermanns, your Jamel Hills, everybody in that whole hall of shame, you know they saw this news and immediately, reflexively, started writing their respective monologues about how suffocating dogs and cats is actually totally awesome. It's absolutely crucial to our naval defense readiness, and Trump would only do this because he's a racist authoritarian who hates democracy or something. Hell, Olbermann probably did a whole fucking miniseries about it already, for all I know. But based on his view counts lately, it's not like anybody would know one way or the other because nobody watched. If we're being honest, Keith Olbermann would probably have to light his hair on fire while coming out as a non-binary drag queen space alien at this point in order to pop 50,000 views, which, to be fair, probably wouldn't leave him all that far behind the MSNBC primetime lineup at this point, am I right? You know, I actually can recall posing that very same rhetorical question from time to time before. In fact, I've probably done it on this very program. The question that says, if Trump says he likes cats and dogs, would Democrats start executing their pets? And I've been pretty firmly in the camp of, yeah, I think they probably would. In fact, I'm fairly certain of it. Because if life has taught this reporter anything over the course of the last decade since Mr. and Mrs. Trump first came down that golden escalator, it's that Trump derangement syndrome and Trump psychosis complex are two afflictions that don't know any limiting principle. And I'm glad for my part that weird, creepy, pointless animal experimentation has been a particular focus of Doge's cost-cutting efforts. In fact, this thing with the Navy Department is just the latest chapter in a series of cancellations that began back in March. And you want to hear about some of the stuff that the National Institutes of Health were doing with Fido and Fluffy? Yeah, I think you do. Quote, one of the grants, worth $299,940, was titled Gender-Affirming Testosterone Therapy on Breast Cancer Risk and Treatment Outcomes, and used toward transmasculine animal experiments in which female cats were administered testosterone and had their ovaries removed, end quote. In other words, for you Alex Jones fans out there, they were not just turning the frogs gay, which they were, by the way, they very much were doing that. He was right about that one all along, but they were also transing the dogs and the cats. They are transing the dogs, they're transing the cats. Is that worse than Haitian migrants eating the dogs and the cats? I can't say. That's not for me to decide. After all, we report, you decide. That's the way this equation remains.